the 27th Psalm. That's where we're going to be this evening as we think about under pressure. Under pressure. And we've also already had several conversations pre-sermon. I don't know if people are trying to ruin the sermon beforehand or they're trying to make it better. I don't know. But we've had some conversations about the song Under Pressure. So if you're an 80s, I guess, song person, then you're thinking about Under Pressure. Or some of us that are football fans, we might be thinking about the quarterback, and there's even a specific stat for the times that the quarterback is considered pressured in a game. And a lot of what that comes down to is actual pressure, and he doesn't have the time to make decisions and to make the play as he would have otherwise. And if you're filling out this evening, you might begin there with the word life, that life is filled with challenges, with struggles, responsibilities, demands upon our time, upon our abilities. You think about the RPMs that hopefully are, well, I don't know what I did there. But anyway, you think about the RPMs pushing the engine. And there was a remark already made about that one, of how that's an easy way to blow your engine up. But isn't that how we feel sometimes? We feel like the life has thrown so much that we just get a bit overwhelmed, and it's too much at times. Regardless of exactly what we're thinking of this evening, we've all experienced different kinds of pressures, stressors, different weights, different forces that seem like they're bearing down on us in life. We've been under pressure. And yet, God in His wisdom, in His Word this evening, has given us some insights, some encouragements, some cautions, some reminders, and all of that, all the above, from Psalm 27 for our pressured lives, our pressured hearts. If we had to pick one key thought for the evening, it might be the very first two statements, or the first verse, as it is, as we have them in Psalm 27. It's actually the coat of arms of the University of Oxford. If you look at their coat of arms, you'll see the phrase Dominus Illuminatio Me. And it's Latin for the Lord is my light. Isn't that how Psalm 27 begins? If you look there at Psalm 27 verse 1, the Lord is my light. And it goes on to say, my salvation. Whom shall I fear? If we put it in the context tonight of being under pressure, it's what is there out there that can really overtake my life, my heart? Do I really have something to be afraid of? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. He's the shelter in the storm. He's the deliverance, the relief from the pressures of life. Of whom shall I be afraid? And of course, just so we're all on the same page, those questions he's asking about fear are meant to be rhetorical, right? We can make it a declaration tonight. I don't have anything really to be afraid of or to be overwhelmed by if, that can be a big if the Lord is the light of my life. So that's the ultimate takeaway this evening, is if you make the Lord the light of your life, and He will be that light if you'll let Him, then the pressures and the struggles, the challenges we face, they will not go away, but we can find a way to press forward through them all, or under them all, under pressure. Let's look this evening at these three from Psalm 27. First, let's consider the pressure a little more. We've already done that, but let's look at it in the text. And then we'll look at the way forward, the way to get through, as we said. And then we'll close with, appropriately, the why. The why. Do you know your why? We begin then with the pressure itself. We're going to pick up in Psalm 27 now at verse 2, right after that opening key thought, Psalm 27. We'll look at 2 and 3 for this part. If you want to go ahead and make your eyes to those two verses, those two lines of Psalm 27. There are different types of pressures. If the human author of this is David, as it is traditionally thought, you might have "of David" at the top in your Bible. You don't have to look at David's life for very long to see different pressures for David. We don't know which one this is. There's some tradition behind it. This may be a time when he's running for his life and he's having to find different ways to survive. And sometimes go to some extremes to do that. But he's a man who went through his own. He endured his own stressors and pressures of life. He runs from King Saul. He runs from his own son. He went through it. So he's writing here about a time like that, and he's writing in that post way, where he's looking back after it's over. Now, later, in verses 7 through 10, it's almost like he goes back and relives the emotions he felt of when he cries out to the Lord for help, when he's reminded of the importance of seeking God, of seeking intimacy, seek my face with God. But in verses 2 and 3, he highlights what it was like. He says first he felt attacked. I say felt because this is poetry. This may be a time when David is actually having to fight physically, and he's being chased and attacked. You can think of Goliath and all the way through, of times he had to actually physically fight armies, fight against the enemies of God's people. But for most of us, that's not the case. But have you ever felt attacked? Can you get into the emotion of this evening of verse 2 when he says, read it with me, when evildoers assail me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes. Now he does already provide the answer here at the end. He says, it is they who stumble and fall. They're not going to get the best of me. They haven't got the best of me in the past. And at the end, he says, even though these things happen in verse 3, he'll say, my heart won't be afraid, and I will remain confident. But we go through things like that. We feel attacked. Maybe it's the people in our lives. It seems like there's some people that are out to get us. They're out against us. There's a passage of Scripture that talks about not rejoicing at wrongdoing, and the idea of not rejoicing when others fail as well. But some people are like that, aren't they? It seems like they can't wait to see us fall. They're just watching and waiting. They might not even be directly involved, but they're waiting until we lose at life. And then they can have their moment to, at least on the inside, celebrate, or maybe not just on the inside. Or it might be the bills that are piling up. It might be the deadlines you're facing. It might be your health risks. Different times when maybe now it's not a person as much as it feels like Satan and just the world has brought an army to attack us. The pressures. Look at the rest of verse 2 that we read. He also says that it's like being eaten, or I keep some of the wording flowing here. I use the word consumed. Ever been there? Ever felt like life was eating you up? Maybe it is the different demands on your time. Just not enough time in the day, or not enough days in the week to get it all done. And sometimes we hide from that and we don't get anything done, or sometimes we try to get too much done. And it feels like our energy, our health, our time is eaten away. It's consumed. Whether we're going through different seasons of life and experiencing the transitions of different ages in our life, whether we've got some teens here tonight, we've got some kids here tonight. Okay, sometimes it feels like you're being consumed. Just they don't have time for everybody, and yet you're supposed to. You got to go to this event, and you've got to make sure you see this ball game, and the weekend gets full really quickly. He says attacked, consumed, and then this third one in verse 3, besieged. It's feeling surrounded. Maybe this is where you put all of it together. It's just sometimes the pressures of life, I'm under so much pressure, it feels like there's an army that surrounded my city, my life, my heart. So it's like I'm besieged by an enemy. Psalm 27, verse 3, he says, though an army encamp against me, or an army besiege me, my heart shall not fear. Though war arise against me, yet I will be confident. Here are some reminders to us tonight of the different struggles we face in life, the different list we could build of pressures, things that pull at our lives, but really what we're getting at tonight is these are things that pull at our hearts. And if we're not careful, we won't be like David. We won't be confident and not afraid. We'll be overtaken by our own lives. Here are some of the pressures that we face. And I don't know if you want to do this or not, but you can make your own list, right? You can go home tonight and make a list of here's all the different pressures on me right now, all the different things that, not just my to-do list, that's just part of it. Here's all that's weighing on my heart, the burdens that I'm bearing, the pressure. So what do you do with the pressure? Well, let's make our way to the end of the psalm. We're going to start at the beginning and now go to the end, and we'll come back to the middle in just a moment. There's the pressure, attacked, consumed, besieged by the armies of life and Satan. And now we think about the way forward, the way to get through it. We're going to begin in verse 11. If you want to look over there already, might be across the page. It is for me. The way's not going to be easy. Sometimes it may be like the straight road and the sunny skies. Sometimes it may be the winding road around the mountain. There's not much shoulder, and it wouldn't take much to go over the edge. I'm not talking about actual roads, so we're clear. Sometimes it's the bridge or the steep road. I know we don't have really a lot of those in our state, especially our part of the state, but you've traveled. It's where you can't see the rest of the road. You've been there. It might be a curve, but I'm thinking about a sharp drop-off where you can't see what's ahead. You don't know. I'm mindful of what still I think holds the record for the longest continuous bridge across water. It's down by New Orleans. It's across Lake Pontchartrain, the Lake Charles I-10 causeway. They call it the causeway. They don't even call it the Pontchartrain causeway. It's just the causeway. 24 miles long. People have got stuck on the bridge because they get afraid. And the police have had to come rescue stranded drivers in the middle of the 24-mile bridge. How do you get through? We won't always know what's around the corner. In fact, most of the time, it's true, isn't it? We don't know what's coming next in line. We think we do, but we don't. So what do? You keep trusting. Look at verse 11 of Psalm 27. The way forward is trusting God. Psalm 27, verse 11, he says, teach me your way. I did steal the word. I just added a T-H-E in front of it. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path. That's what he wants. He wants the straight path and the level path. But we're recognizing it's not always going to be that way in the moment because of my enemies. Keep trusting, keep learning. I should have said learning, right? Trusting was the second one, okay? So bear with me there. You're learning, you're trusting in God. So if I could back up there, we'd say you keep learning more about God and His will. Don't stop that part. There may be times when, in a sense, you give up as you surrender and you say, I can't do this, Lord. Kind of like verses 7 through 10. But don't ever give in to life and Satan's ploys and Satan's distractions and discouragements. Keep learning. And whether that is as simple as to keep reading your Bible, keep studying, keep coming to worship, you keep learning. And then, yes, we already said this one, so I'm just going to say it again. Keep trusting Him because you don't know. Part of trust includes the idea that I don't know everything. We can have certainty in God and in His Word and His promises. But on the other hand, trusting God isn't the kind of certainty where I know how everything is going to turn out between here and there. I know how it's all going to end. I don't know all the details in between. I don't have all the answers. I'm trusting in a God who does. That's trust. So look at 12 and 13 now. He says, give me not up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they breathe out violence. And then verse 13, I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. No matter how bleak, how heavy it seems at times, what if we just took verse 13 and said, that's my motto? We said verse 1. What if verse 13 is another motto? That I've got trust in God that here's what I'm going to see. I'm going to see His goodness in the land of the living. He's got this. He's got me. I just simply have to trust Him through it. How do you find the way forward? You keep learning His way, His truth, filling your heart with His word, and then you trust Him. And here's the third word. It's waiting. Because He's not going to automatically take away all the pressures in my life. You know, sometimes those pressures may be there for a reason to help me and to help me grow and get stronger. Think about that. But I'm going to have to wait. This waiting is not the kind of waiting where you sit and just wait for God to do something. There may be times when there's nothing in this situation you can change, and you almost do that. But generally, the idea of waiting in the Scriptures is an active waiting. It's I'm waiting on God, but I'm also going to be active doing His will. I'm going to do things I know that are right and pleasing Him. If I can find the next right thing to do in this situation, I'll do it while I wait on Him and trust Him. Look at the last verse, Psalm 27. Here's how it ends. Wait for the Lord. Be strong, and let your heart take courage. Hold on. Don't give up, as we said in the ultimate sense. Don't give in. Wait on God. Almost find strength from this. Strengthen your own heart. Wait on the Lord. Wait for the Lord is the then parallel repetition there. The last call on our hearts from Psalm 27. How do you find the way forward? You can break it down and you can think about it this way. You can make that list and you can do what people have said to do in the sense of making a list of things you can control and things you can't control. And the things you can't control, you give totally to God, trusting, waiting. You can break your life down into here's my spiritual center, and then I've got my emotions, and then my physical life outside of all of that. And all of it centered by the way I'm seeking after God. Or, put it in those three words, the way I'm learning about Him and His way, trusting and depending on Him, and waiting on Him. Sometimes our difficulties are increased because we're trying to control and take care of everything. I like how one writer asked, why is it that after we spend a whole night unconscious, assuming you sleep all night, unconscious and totally dependent on God? We're not the ones that somehow make our way through the night. We're asleep. Then we get up in the morning and decide to be totally independent. That we're going to solve all the problems. We're going to take care of everything. It's all on us. Of course, people call those control freaks, but how does our faith in God mesh with that mentality? What if instead we realize that really 24/7 I'm totally dependent on God? I just don't always act that way. That's part of the way forward through the pressures of life. Under pressure, it's pressure. The way forward, dependence on God. And maybe if we took those three words and made them one statement, depending on God. Let's back up now to verse 4. We were at 2 and 3 earlier. Go back with me now to verse 4 of Psalm 27. The why. Do you know? I asked an 8-year-old boy this afternoon, do you know your why? And the answer, and we might need to work on a more respectful answer, but the answer was, huh? I said, do you know your why? Huh? Do you know yours? This is something also that's popular in different settings, like sports settings, and even in the job place, in the commercial world. They'll bring in speakers, and you need to figure out as a company what's your why. As in a sports team, you need to know: are you playing for your family back home? Are you playing for the naysayers? Are you playing? What are you playing for? What's your why? Yeah, you're on a ball team, but why? What's your why? I'm not talking about your job but your life. Why am I here? What's my purpose in life? Shouldn't that be, maybe if we had to pick one of the big differences between a person who follows God and a person who doesn't, is that they know their why. They know that they were created by a creator. They know that they were created to respond to Him and glorify Him and enjoy life with Him. Why? Let's read it in Psalm 27. Here's how it's put in Psalm 27. It's the request he makes. One thing, Psalm 27, verse 4. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek after. Here's your one thing. Here's your why. That I may dwell in the house of the Lord. And I don't think he's just talking about the tabernacle here in David's time. It's more than just that. All the days of my life, see that? To gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in His temple, in His house. The why for David is, I want to see God. I want to savor God. Seeing and knowing God, being close to God, that's what life is about. And everything else is meant to be filtered through that why. So go back to your list. Your list of pressures. Maybe there's a place to say, some of these things I don't even need to be involved in. I can clear those off my calendar because they're not a priority. I don't have a why to support them. Because the why then leads to other smaller whys, right? Well, I'm doing this because. What if I don't have a why? That's why I'm so pressured, under pressure. Now look at verse 5. Here's his rescue. He says, part of why this is the why is, for He will hide me in His shelter. In the day of trouble He will conceal me. Under the cover of His tent He will lift me high upon a rock. If that's not something to take heart, back to verse 14, to be courageous in our hearts and to be willing to be lifted up under and out of the pressure by God, if that's not something to be excited about and yet at the same time comforted by, then what is? A God who takes His people and lifts them up and holds them up, shelters them. And as you read the Psalms, it is not so much that God has a shelter for us. It's more that He is the shelter. He is the relief, the place of rescue. Not that I'm necessarily running away from life to God, but that I do run to God. Verse 4 is, I want to see and be with God because, verse 5 says, He's going to shelter and lift me up. And then verse 6, I kind of said it as if if that ain't something to shout and rejoice about, then what is? Well, look at verse 6. The rejoicing. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me. And I will offer in His tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody, which does sound familiar to a later passage, doesn't it? I will sing and make melody to the Lord. So you start Psalm 27, almost the beginning, and it's, I'm attacked and besieged. And then before too long, it's, I'm singing and rejoicing to the Lord. You ask David in Psalm 27, verse 6, what about those pressures? Are they gone? And he shakes his head, no. I might be through one valley, one experience of them, but there's going to be more. And some of them are daily ongoing. But I know why. Why I'm here on this planet. And I know where I'm going. I'm going to my God in my spiritual life now. And I'm going to be with my God in every sense of the word then. To live forever in His tent now and then. Under pressure. Guided by Psalm 27 this evening, we've seen or focused on the pressure itself. We've considered some ideas, some encouragements for the way forward. Learning from God, trusting in God, waiting for our God. And then a very simple and yet profound reminder. Don't lose sight of your why. You were created to enjoy the beauty and the glory of your Creator. That is your why. Our why. Now, Gary's going to lead us in a song of an encouragement this evening. May we be encouraged tonight that despite how heavy life can get, despite how much Satan and his minions may look for our downfall, that we serve and we trust in a God who gives us a way forward through it. And even a God who lifts us up above the pressures of life. I was reading about Ernest Shackleton. In his ship, the Endurance, what a name for what happened. He set out with his crew, he's a British explorer, in 1914 to Antarctica. They get stuck in the ice. Before too long, the ice crushes, talk about pressure, crushes the Endurance, the ship. They're left with their lifeboats and the winter terrain. And yet, by Shackleton's leadership, they survived for 2 years. In 1415 in Antarctica. He goes down in history as this example of perseverance and this unwillingness to give up. In fact, one of his crew would later write, and they would say, if you want leadership itself, they mentioned a man named Scott. If you want scientific expertise, this guy. But if you are beyond help, you don't know what to do next. He said, you get down on your knees. I mean, his words here, okay, this is what he said. You get down on your knees and you pray for Shackleton. That's how he saw Shackleton, as he's the guy that can get you through anything. Well, we're not none of us are, I don't think, Antarctic explorers. But we are going through life. And the ice, the pressure tries to crush our ship. Maybe sometimes it feels like it's already happened. We're on the lifeboat stage. But what if, in the mindset of Ernest Shackleton, we said, I'm going to get through this. And not just out of sheer grit and determination, but because I'm waiting on the Lord. Stand and sing together.